guys, Caitlin here. For those who have not seen part 1 already, I do have it linked in the description box below, but I'm continuing my 2024 reading wrap up. I read 50 books this year, and we are starting in the month of August. So again, go check out the other months of the year down in the description box. Let me know what you guys think, and I hope you all enjoy the video. So August was an insane month of reading. I think I read, was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books in the month of August. And one of those being a whole new series that one of my coworkers showed me. It's by Rosaria Munda. I'm already forgetting what the series is called. I just know the book names. The first book is called Fireborn. It might be the Fireborn series for all I know. But it takes a lot of what happened in the French Revolution and adding fantasy and dragons to it. That already appealed to me. I love some history mixed in with fantasy elements. So I was really, really pleasantly surprised by this series. I gave the first book 4.5 stars. I had never read so much like political fantasy before, so it made me actually more interested in looking up the politics of the French Revolution and how a country recovers from a revolution of that size. There is just like so much that made me so interested in politics, which I've never fully been invested in before, but just hearing all of these like twists and turns and different battles that they face, not just like with dragons and actually fighting, but also on like a political landscape, like rationing food, class division, like all those different things. It was really well done in my opinion. I really want to know what research she did on this book. So yeah, I genuinely loved it. I thought the characters were really beautifully written, and I could definitely see where both characters were coming from, because the male main character, he's a descendant from the original royal family that was then like brutally murdered in like the revolutions, and then Annie, our female character, she's from like the lowest ranks of society and like their class division of society, but she's leveled up to be within like the government and military structure, so she obviously has a completely different perspective on the revolution and the pros and cons. So seeing them kind of pair together and learning their different sides of opinions, reconciling with what your family did versus what's been done to you personally, I just thought that was really interesting. And I was very engaged the entire time. I said that they're both perfectly complicated and that I rooted for both of them wholeheartedly. So yeah, I gave that 4.5 stars. Flamefall, which is the second book in this series, I gave that 5 stars. I genuinely think that was the best book out of the entire series. I literally wrote majestic, heartbreaking in all caps, because it really was absolutely heartbreaking but amazing. There was more of a fight between our two characters. There was more at stake. We were then introduced to a whole nother host of characters, where another potential revolution was happening. So hearing all these different perspectives and point of view was just like, I could feel like the adrenaline levels getting up there. I felt like I was on the edge of my seat, and I wrote that it made me want to research history because it just felt so realistic despite their big dragons. I was a little bit let down with Fury Song, which is the final book in the series. This again had the issue of a bad ending. And it wasn't the fact that some people lived, some people died. It was more the fact of how that was handled. There's this one character who, one, I didn't think deserved to die at all, so I was a little upset. But also, it was not the fact that he died, it was the fact that his death was completely overlooked. Like, he was a major important character, and so I feel like when you write a death, you can then expect some sort of sadness or grieving period or action as a result of that, and there was none of that. It was almost like he died for nothing, like the author killed him off and then was like, okay, we're moving on, as if she also felt nothing. I felt appalled by that. There are a lot of things that I felt like were unfinished, particularly the plot of the two main characters. Like, it felt like they had achieved like a final battle scene or whatever, and then suddenly it's like, oh, our future together is left like unknown. I don't quite know what's gonna happen next. No, this is the end of the series. You're not writing any more books. We need a proper epilogue where you have these hard conversations and revelations, and then you, I don't know, have that final kiss or something where you understand what's going to happen from this point on. You don't leave it abrupt and you just don't know what the characters are going to do now. Like, I feel like there's more resolution to that, and there just wasn't enough resolution to me. I wanted so much more, and it just felt like she didn't even finish the book. So I was really let down, but the entire journey up until that very end was still enjoyable. So I gave it a 4.5 star. So yeah, that was that series. Overall, I really enjoyed the series as a whole. I would recommend it. Very solid political fantasy. Just be prepared to be unsatisfied at the very end. I also read The Summer Job by Lizzie Dent. This was a book that I DNF'd it for a while, which just did not finish. I had picked it up, I think, in the summer of 2021, and I did not pick it up until this past year. I did feel the ending did not do justice at all. I felt like the character grew so much to then just brush off her own development was crazy. The basic premise of The Summer Job is that this girl, Birdie, she finds herself homeless and aimless, and her friend has basically decided, hey, like, I got this job, but I'm actually not going to take it. I'm going to run away to another part of Europe. Can you tell them that I'm not taking the job? And Birdie's like, that's strange, but this job comes with housing. Let me just pretend to be my friend, so that I can have a place to live, maybe make some money, and I'll just pretend that I know everything about wine. She's a sommelier, I think is how you say it. A wine specialist, basically. And so she just like basically pretends to be a sommelier, and there's just so much character development. And when it comes to light that Birdie has been pretending to be her friend, she just like all this development. I was just like, I wanted her to mention how, but I could have been homeless, like I didn't have anywhere else to go, like, but then she's like, she just started talking about how like, oh, I just wanted to be you, sorry. Like, no, that's not what I got from why you did what you did. You were desperate. You needed somewhere to live, and you ended up falling in love and getting a passion. And for you to discount the work that you did and the growth that you had by just saying you just wanted to experience something new, that's not what I got at all. That's not like a moral of the story kind of lesson that I wanted her to get out of it. She got nothing out of her experience at that point. Then I felt very cheated. Like, I felt like the character didn't understand the growth that she had, and at the same time, that the author didn't understand the growth that she had. I think Birdie could have achieved a lot more, and so the ending felt really flat. I didn't see her as an identity thief. I saw her as a girl in trouble and at risk of homelessness trying to find her way. And I don't know why the author didn't agree with me on that and give her a much more satisfying ending. So I gave this a 3.5 stars. It's pretty disappointing overall. But then we get into what I think was one of the knockout series of the year. I have so many series this year, it's actually crazy. I did not expect the Summer I Turned Pretty series to be so good, because this is Jenny Han. I already didn't like To All the Boys I Loved Before series, so I was really expecting to dislike the Summer I Turned Pretty series. Turns out I devoured these books. They're also small. They're barely 300 pages, but I absolutely devoured these books. It was like almost like one book a day, it felt like. So it's Summer I Turned Pretty, It's Not Summer Without You, and then We'll Always Have Summer. So Summer I Turned Pretty, I gave this one 4 stars. I started to try to watch the show a little bit ago. Found that I didn't really like it. It just didn't really feel like for me. Much better in book form. And it was really nice seeing how seamless it was to go from the present day to the past and sort of understanding our main character's perspective on the 2 boys that she visits every summer, because their moms are best friends. It felt like I could smell the salt water and the seawater. It felt like I was really there within their summer. And the pacing was really good too. I said, despite me not being 15 anymore, I could still relate to her, which is really nice, which is, I think, why I didn't like the show. It felt like she was too much in high school. She was also aged down in the show. She was actually, she felt even younger. But in the book here, I felt like she was a little bit more mature, and I could relate to her on like a different level. It's Not Summer Without You. I gave it a 5-star rating. I really enjoyed all of the grief and character development that we really saw. This can be considered, I guess, like love triangle-y, but there's something so much more compelling about the story than that, because they also have like this shared history between the three of them, and it was much more emotional than I was expecting, given that another character like passed away in between the first book and this book. I started tearing up. You could really feel the grief and the pain in the book. We were introduced to another brother's point of view, which we hadn't beforehand, which was very helpful. I really felt for all of them. And oh, actually, I didn't give it 5 stars. That's a half. I gave it 4.5 stars. But it was still a really great read. I really enjoyed it. I can't say that I fully understood one of the brother's opinions and perspectives, because he was still pretty bitter. Maybe that means I am mentally more healthy than he is, which is probably true. But I still really enjoyed seeing how they were all affected by the death of a character, which led right up into We'll Always Have Summer. I also gave this one 4.5 stars now that I'm seeing that. And it's crazy reading this book, because this is a book where for majority of it, there's a wedding being planned between the main character and one of the brothers. And I remarked, it's funny reading this while also in the trenches of planning my own wedding. I couldn't help but think back to my 18-year-old self and think what she would do, because the main character is only 18, and she's kind of spur of the moment decides she wants to marry, or agrees to marry a brother, one of the brothers. And I said that this book was a roller coaster of emotions, but I did like it and thought it was a satisfying ending. Yeah, there was just something about it that was really engaging. A lot of drama, but it wasn't like, it didn't feel like high school drama anymore. There was like real, true, like relationship issues and things happening. And I just thought it was really fun overall to read that progression. And I liked that she wasn't like she hopped from one brother to another. It was much more complicated than that, which I appreciated, because it can feel demeaning sometimes to read how a girl just goes from one person to the other. That, I don't know, that just feels demeaning to read after a while of reading that happening over and over again. So it's nice seeing how she actually has a connection with both of them, and how difficult it can be when you care about two people so much, but they have different perspectives on you. So yeah, I just thought it was really engaging overall. I did not expect to like it. That's why I say it's like my knockout series of the year, because I did not expect it, but I thought it was really well done. On to September. I realized as I was filming this that I completely forgot a book. So one more book I read in August was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. It is an autobiography, obviously written by Jennette McCurdy, and it kind of goes through her life as a child actor, going into the years that I knew her from, which is when she was in Nickelodeon and iCarly, Sam and Cat. And I rated this book 5 stars. I don't usually read autobiographies. They're not something that I'm like drawn to usually, but this one really sucked me in. The way that she wrote the book was just so beautiful. And I know the title obviously like sucks you in and you have all these like assumptions on what it's about, but it really is like a heartbreaking look on her childhood, and different things that happened. She doesn't necessarily go through each thing as like this happened, then this happened, then this happened, like I'm sure other autobiographies can be structured. It's almost like she goes into important scenes and memories that then shaped something later on that happened in her life, and there's a lot of just reflection happening in it as well, and it's almost like you're going on this journey with her, and her writing really just sucked me in. It made me feel for her, but also understand her. And yeah, I thought this was an absolutely amazing book. I do not know how I forgot to write it in my reading journal, hence why I forgot to mention it in the video. But I recommend everybody reading it. It is definitely one of my favorite autobiographies I've ever read. And that's saying something because I only read 2 so far. But now this has got me interested in reading more autobiographies, so I will let you know what I feel about some other ones that I find, but we're starting off strong with this one. So September, I also read 7 books, and this is mainly in preparation because I was getting married in October. I wanted to read more books so that when I wasn't going to read any books in October over my honeymoon, I would be like still within my reading goal. So I decided to check out 2 books from the library on my phone on the Libby app, and that was 2 books from Ali Hazelwood, Check and Mate and Love Theoretically. Both these are romances. One is a chess related romance, Checkmate, and then one is a physics related book, Love Theoretically. So the first one, Check and Mate, I gave this one 4 stars. I thought it was fun. Sometimes I was not interested in some of the side plots. As what happens in other books, there's more than just the romance happening. There's other things happening in the characters' lives with their families. I was just plainly not interested in some of the side plots. I was more interested in our main character, her views on chess as a career, just like in the competitive chess sports world. So I thought that was interesting. I hadn't ever read something that romanticized chess, so I did not expect that at all. But I thought it was pretty fun. I guess Ali Hazelwood has like a tradition of choosing like a progression or career and then making a romance off of that. So Love Hypothesis, I think it was like chemistry related, and then this is chess related, and then obviously, like I said, physics related. So yeah, it was solid overall. I gave it a 4. It was mid. It was not super breathtaking, but it was still an enjoyable read. Love Theoretically though, I did give it 4 stars. I felt like it was more emotional. I think because she's going through, it's more, she is a physicist, but she's also going through a lot of career insecurity, or she'll like apply for a job and get like rejected, and it's pretty brutal of a rejection. So that just made me feel more emotional because I feel like I related to that, because I'm also struggling with jobs and what I'm going to do with my life next. So I felt like I related to that a lot more. And so I definitely related to how high she valued her work and her career. I wasn't quite able to follow this one plot line of which she adjusts. The author describes her as like adjusting her personality depending on who she's with. I didn't really pick up on that. I don't even quite know what that means. But it was like a bit of like contention between the 2 characters about that. I don't know. I don't quite understand it. Maybe I just didn't understand that fully enough. It wasn't explained well enough for me to get it. But yeah, overall, not bad. Not fantastic, but not bad. So I gave it a 4. As we move into September though, I did pick up a few horror or darker fantasy related books, one of them being Horror Store, which I was super excited about. It's a fun book because it looks like an IKEA catalog, and it is like a ripoff of IKEA, but like a horror store. Basically you're reading about this store location that is basically haunted, and the main characters stay overnight to try to figure out what's happening in the store. But the visuals, I could try to like put some more pictures of the illustrations in the book. That's what made it like really funny and engaging too. It was a short book, but the illustrations really made it engaging because you felt like you were also reading like an IKEA catalog. I definitely was expecting it to be scarier. I've read one other book by Grady Hendrix. It was How to Sell a Haunted House. That book freaked me out. I will definitely reread that one because that was amazing. This one I wasn't that scared reading. And the plot twist of like what's actually happening, I was like, oh, it's not that scary. It put me like enough on edge to read it during like the daytime, and not while I'm trying to like sleep or whatever, because some visuals can be a little terrifying. But overall, I expected to be even more scared, like the first one, because the first one I was like jaw drop horror. This one I was just like, that's pretty crazy. That was like my reaction the whole time. So I gave it a 4-star. It was a slightly unsatisfying ending, but I'm glad that it wasn't one of those things where it's like, oh, it's over now, you're safe. I was glad that there's like implication that the evil has not fully left the area, so I enjoyed that. In August, I believe, is when the It Ends With Us movie came out. And in order to do my full review, I wanted to reread the book. So I reread the book. I'm not quite sure, but I read it the first time. This time around, I gave it a 4-star, which, like I said, is my mid-range. And I mean, watch the video. I feel like I go into even more detail, but just quickly here, I said that the depiction of domestic violence is powerful, especially in this way. I'm glad that the author addressed generational patterns of domestic violence and how that can affect future relationships, and how children viewing it can often replicate those behaviors later on. The only issue I had with the book were all the small details. Lily's name, unrealistic, business setup, writing to Ellen, etc. I enjoyed the relationship building far more, but still was a good book in my opinion. I have not read any other Colleen Hoover books other than like It Ends With Us series. I have, what is it? I have Ugly Love on November 9th on my shelf that I'm afraid to open. Because I bought that before knowing what those books are about. Now that I know what those books are about, I'm terrified. But again, I really want to read every book that I own, even if I get rid of them after the fact. So eventually, maybe this year I will read it, force myself to read it. But yeah, I'm glad they got rid of a few things, but the premise still has issues in my opinion, primarily with the small details. But I did like the relationship and what was happening, talking about like domestic violence. I thought that was all very interesting. So yeah, I gave that one a 4 stars. Next is my very first James Patterson book. I read First to Die, which is like a murder mystery thriller. There was way more violence than I was anticipating. It was, the basic premise is like there's a serial killer. What I didn't realize is that the serial killer is targeting newlyweds on their wedding night, which is really funny to me, because I was reading this not even a month before my wedding. So I was just like, oh great, I gotta make sure that like this doesn't make me anxious about where I'm staying on my wedding night, because I'm reading about a serial killer who's killing people on their wedding night. But yeah, a lot more crime than I was expecting, a lot more violence. I mean, you have to know how the crime is committed. It was just a lot more sexual violence than I was prepared for. But the way that we tried to figure out who did it was still like fun enough that I was engaged. I didn't guess the like full like explanation of who did it, and I also didn't like it. It felt too twisty, if that makes sense. Like there was one reveal where I was like, oh whoa, that's crazy, and then they almost flipped that reveal on its head like 40 pages later, and I was like, oh, but I liked it when it was the other way. If that makes sense. Like I felt like we twisted back and forth a little bit too much at the end to try to be crazy and, oh, I bet you didn't see that coming. Like I don't know, I don't really feel that very much. And I said adding in not 1 but 2 twists in the last 50 pages didn't fully cut it for me. So yeah, 4 stars overall though. I guess it's a part of like a larger series, but I don't think I'm gonna read the rest of them, because I don't read many crime. But yeah, overall, not too shabby. Last 2 books of September fall right into fall and spooky season. So I read Beautiful Creatures, which I read part of back in, I want to say high school age. Very much kind of giving Twilight, except with witches. Overall, I enjoyed it. I said that it has like a Twilight quality to it, and like the writing The romance plot wasn't as interesting as the main character's family dynamics, which is shocking because usually it's the other way around. But I found the family dynamics way more interesting. I think that's primarily because the world building was more interesting to me than their relationship, because it was also just your standard high school relationship, nothing too crazy there. But I found it a pretty enjoyable read. I do have the second book, Beautiful Darkness, that I do think I will actually pick up and read, because I've never fully read the series. I did see the movie, which I enjoyed. So yeah, 4 stars for that. And lastly, for September, I read Hex in the City by Kate Johnson. And I said I thought I knew how this book was going to go, but then the plot took a turn towards full romance, kind of melodramatic, but I enjoyed it. Some parts I laughed out loud, and was the perfect lighthearted book for spooky season. Yeah, I thought there was going to be more adventure, and then it just became romantic primarily, which was like, oh, okay, that was resolved quickly. I thought there was going to be more to it than that, but it was still enjoyable enough. Nothing to go home about. A fun, witchy read, but again, it was more romance at the end of the day. So yeah, just 4 stars overall. And now we go into October. So October and November are together in the sense that I didn't technically finish a single book in October, but I started reading these books in October. So the first book I started reading in October was Covet, which is the 3rd book in that Tracy Wolff Crave series that I was mentioning. This book was even crazier, if that's even possible, yet the plot was more refined, if that makes sense. I felt like we actually got somewhere that was very interesting and very engaging, and that was like halfway through the book. I did find the main character extraordinarily more annoying in this book than in the other 2. I was very annoyed with her thought processes, how she believes she needs to sacrifice one relationship for another, when I don't believe that would make any sense for her to even believe that that was something that she needed to do. There's just so many things that I just was like, got it. Why are you concerned? I think this is a non-issue. And I don't think your plan's gonna work. So I was rooting for the plan to either be revealed not to work and her to be distraught about it, or for her to realize that her plan is terrible and to finally have a new plan. But it took a very long time to get there. So yeah, I was like seriously, who told her that that plan would even work? Not to mention it would break another character in return. But there's a point in the book where she goes to prison, and that was incredibly enjoyable. I really enjoyed that part. That was way more fun. A lot more world building was done within that prison scene and scenes following that. And I said that I hope our main character becomes less annoying and stressful in the next book. But I have a feeling that won't change. But I did give this book 4 stars. Another book I read in November, starting October going in November, was Twilight. I reread the entire Twilight series this year. Again, we have a theme. So I started reading Twilight while on my honeymoon, finished it in November. I'm not quite sure what I've rated it in the past, but I'm pretty sure I gave all of the books 4 stars. Yeah, 4 stars overall. This is not my first rodeo reading it. I said, despite what everyone says, I think it's a pretty solid opening book to a series. It's always fun to reread it. My favorite part is watching Bella and Edward fall in love and her subsequently discovering he's a vampire. I also love how simple their life is compared to later books. There's just something enjoyable about the, is she gonna find out? Is she not gonna find out? Is he just weird, or is he actually a supernatural creature? Like, there's a lot more fun banter in this book than the other books. So that's why it's always a fun reread to me, particularly before they actually get together as a couple. I find that their relationship build up is very enjoyable. So I always enjoy that one. Continuing further into November, though, I read Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Maier. Marer. I hope that's how you say that last name. But I gave this book 5 stars. This is a fantastic book. So much so that I am still waiting eagerly for my Libby notification saying that this sequel is ready for me to read. I booked it. I reserved it from the library on November 4th. And it's like January 14th, 15th today. And I still have about 6 more weeks to go before that book will be ready for me to read. So I'm very excited. A little sad I had to wait that long, but I don't want to spend money on books. So you do what you gotta do. But like I said, 5 stars. I said this was a delicious, slow burn romance with excellent world building. The adventure, the danger, the hidden feelings. It was a joyful ride. Sad to see yet another cliffhanger, but with how things were left off and the plot twists that were revealed, I am still satisfied. So much fun, so great, really nice fantasy world building. I guess I enjoyed the simplistic nature of it too. Like there wasn't anything super complicated. Like Lily, she's an assistant to a major villain who's just like attacking the king. And I'm sure we're going to get even more depth in the second book as we find out how the king and the villain know each other. But it is just so fun seeing her work for a bad guy, but also the bad guy not being that much of a bad guy. So yeah, I really enjoyed that book, and I cannot wait for the next one. So I read, like I said, New Moon next, going into Eclipse in Breaking Dawn. I know that in the past when I've read New Moon, I would cry. This time around I did not. Maybe I've grown. I don't quite know. But I still found it enjoyable, just like every other time. I think it's kind of redundant to say what I thought about this. I always love the werewolf element. I love that part of the world building. I am kind of curious if at any point we could see Charlie's point of view. That's Bella's dad. Because there's a lot going on in these books, and there's a lot that Bella, our main character, keeps doing that I think any father would be horrified at. So I do kind of wish there was more about him and more about what he's experienced and seen. But it is a fun reread overall, and I greatly enjoyed it. And now we go on to December to finish it off. Starting off December strong with Eclipse. It has always been my favorite of the Twilight books. I think primarily because things start getting interesting with other actual antagonists. It's not just the characters breaking up or something. So we finally see more world building. We see other people. We see dynamics. Obviously, everyone knows it for the major love triangle. I don't even see it as a triangle. She does not like the other guy nearly as much as Edward, but it is still fun, entertaining, a good time. I have no complaints. I've read it so many times now, but it is my favorite for a reason. Just significantly more engaging than just relationship issues. That's how I feel similarly about Breaking Dawn, another 4-star. I think what I almost wish with Breaking Dawn is that we just saw a little bit more daily life. There's something so fun about when Bella's like finally like a vampire, and how it feels like it's like meant to be in that way. I like her transformation. I do think the pregnancy plot is very strange. Very strange. But it is always a fun reread. I've pushed past the ridiculousness of it, and just accepted that it is enjoyable to me overall. I can admit that, again, there's some slight weird world building, bad writing elements, but I do like the premise. I do like the ending. I love all the powers. And yeah, fun time overall. The next couple of books of the year, overall, just kind of meh. I kind of wish I ended the year off on a better note. The next one I read was A Message to Garcia, which I think, was it the army? It was on some sort of like official military reading list. And it's like 3 pages long. And it is what it says, like A Message to Garcia. I guess this guy, I guess more like an essay, I guess. This guy is tasked with delivering a message to Garcia, and he does so without asking unnecessary questions, aka where is he? And he kind of discovers that on his own and delivers it to Garcia without all this like unnecessary stuff. It put a bad taste in my mouth. I described it as feeling like propaganda-y, which I guess makes sense when you take into account that the military would want you to read it, because it's like, do your job without complaining and do it on your own without asking stupid questions. And I think that also relates to the time period when it was released. I think this was released in like early 1900s, or even like late 1890s, in which like employers were like, we want employees to just do what they're told without being like, that's not part of my pay. Like there's like a lot of like criticism about that, and I cannot relate to that because I only want to be told to do what is in my pay grade. And I feel like I'm allowed to ask questions about a task. I should not just be expected to figure it out on my own. I don't know, it felt weird. It felt very weird. I'm very curious as to what other people think about it. But I said that I dislike the notion that I should accomplish things like a pushover. So yeah, that was a message to Garcia. Primarily read that also because I really needed another book to finish 50 books. Next up, I read The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. My first Oscar Wilde book. And this is the book that I was referring to when I was talking about Jane Austen. Well, Oscar Gray goes off on so many tangents. There was the infamous chapter where they talk about the crystals he's interested in, and then going into history he's interested in. We deviate from the plot so many times. I do not even know what this guy happens to be interested in at any given point during his 20s. There was only like certain moments where I was like, wow, the plot's actually happening. Crazy how it's almost like that's what I was opening the book to read about. That's why I gave it 3.5 stars. I just feel like we deviated way too much. A lot of talk of morality and like a sinful, evil nature that I also didn't quite understand. There's also this whole prologue, like introduction thing that I just could not understand. I feel like I need to take a class on this book. I could not wrap my head around what I was supposed to get out of the talks of morality or whatnot. Maybe that was just different language too. But yeah, I wish I could have understood deeper discussions, but honestly that's not why I was reading the book. I was reading the book to see Dorian Gray and this random portrait. So yeah, I loved the ending of that plot specifically, and I thought it was like a really nice surprise about that. I have one more book after that. But I did finish the Dreamland Billionaires series. Like I said, I read The Final Offer. I gave this one a 4 stars. This is the first time I read a book that has the topic of alcoholism being like front and center. I hadn't really read like a book like that before. So it was really interesting. It made me wonder kind of how accurate this is. But from what I know about alcoholism, felt pretty accurate to me, specifically in how alcoholism affects the male character's relationship with the main female character. Again, it was a romance. But it felt more than that. I felt like they were really growing as characters. And I felt sympathetic for everybody involved, because I feel like she took alcoholism as not like, oh, he's just bad, he needs to like shape up. Like you saw more of his own perspective on his alcoholism and how he wants to be better, but knows that sometimes he just falls victim to his anxiety and insecurity. So I thought that was really well done overall. I thought it was the best out of the series, with a very touching story of redemption and getting your life back. That's why I gave it a solid 4 stars. The last book I read of the year was Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I give this one 4 stars. I wanted to give it less, and that was only because I did not know it was possible to overdo world building. The world building was so much that it deviated from the plot. And I had never had that happen before. Usually they are in balance and in tandem with each other. This time was not the same. I felt like there was many times where it's like, oh, I need to now explain to you about this video game from the 80s that may or may not be real, and why that relates to this one particular moment that the main character is doing. It just felt like I just wanted to get back to the point of the story. Like, I don't need all of this information. I also had seen the movie before reading the book, so I was really shocked at how different the book and movie plot are. I really want to know why they made different decisions. I can't say that I liked one over the other. I definitely don't think they're equal, in the sense that they're so different from each other. But when the plot was happening, I liked it. When we were too involved in world building, that's when I thought the book was boring or slow. I kept waiting to get back to the point in the plot. I was so bored many times, despite the general task of the plot being so fun. And I did feel disappointed. But, I keep misreading my own rating system. I gave it 3.5 stars. Wanted to give it 3, definitely, for how boring it felt at times. But I am glad I finished it. It was definitely... I want to read other sci-fi books to see if maybe I like those a little bit better. But overall, that was my book reviews recap of 2024. My thumb is now blue from touching my journal so much. Wow. But I definitely enjoyed a good majority of the books that I read this year. I'm trying to continue to read more books. I'm trying to see if I can read less romance and more fun books. I'm actually reading autobiography right now, Michelle Obama's autobiography. Starting off the year on a much different note. So yeah, I'm hoping to keep expanding, keep discovering new authors and new series. I have a lot of dystopian books on my shelf right now that I'm excited. I've never read The Hunger Games. I'm going to read that. So yeah, if you want to keep up with the reading journey, definitely subscribe, like this video if you want to see more book related content, and I will see you guys in the next time. Bye.